I was kicked out of my own home on Christmas Eve with nowhere to go, but by New Year's Day the same people were begging me for forgiveness. Hey Reddit, I'm Jake Harlan, 29 years old, and if there's one thing I've mastered, it's pushing boundaries. Smart enough to hustle my way through life's curveballs, but stubborn as hell when the going gets rough. I've burned more bridges than I've built. Growing up in the sleepy town of Elmwood, population barely scraping 5,000, I learned early that family ties are a double-edged sword. Fragile as spun glass, yet unbreakable in the way they bind you, choking out your air even as they hold you afloat. My old man was a factory worker, the kind who drank away his dreams and took his frustrations out on the dinner table. Mom tried to keep the peace, but she had her own ghosts, quiet ones, like the miscarriages that left her hollow-eyed and distant. I was the middle kid, sandwiched between an older sister who escaped to the city and a younger brother who idolized me too much. We scraped by on government cheese and hand-me-downs, but I swore I'd break the cycle. From the jump, I was restless. Dropped out of high school at 17, chasing get-rich-quick schemes that fizzled faster than a cheap firework. Odd jobs piled up, flipping burgers at the local diner, mowing lawns in the sweltering summers, even hustling pool at the rundown bar where the regulars nursed their regrets. I dreamed big, starting a tech startup, becoming a musician, hell, even joining the military for a shot at glory. But reality bit hard. The startup flopped when my partner bailed with the funds. My guitar riffs never turned into tours, and the recruiter laughed at my juvenile record. Mistakes? Yeah, I racked them up. Petty theft to feed my habits, a string of bad relationships where I played the rebel without a cause, and one ugly bar fight that left a guy with a broken jaw and me with a rap sheet. I pushed people away, convinced vulnerability was weakness. Family holidays turned into minefields, Uncle Bob's drunken sermons, Aunt Mary's judgmental glares. I drifted, always one step ahead of the consequences, telling myself I'd settle down someday. But nothing prepared me for that night. It was a Tuesday in late autumn, the kind where the air smells like dying leaves and unspoken regrets. I'd been crashing at a buddy's couch after losing my latest gig, drowning my sorrows in cheap whiskey. A knock at the door changed it all, a stranger with a proposition that reeked of danger and opportunity. In that moment, I saw a way out, a chance to rewrite my story. Little did I know, it would drag me into a web of secrets, betrayals, and blood that I'd never escape. Elmwood's grip loosened, but the real chains were just tightening. Get out of my house right now, you ungrateful bastard, before I call the cops. My uncle's voice boomed like thunder, his face a mask of twisted rage, veins bulging in his neck as he shoved a heavy duffel bag into my chest. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and I staggered back, clutching it like a lifeline. It was Christmas Eve, for God's sake, the one night a year when even fractured families pretended to play nice. But not tonight. Snow swirled outside the frosted window like a blizzard of bad omens, blanketing the world in white silence, muffling the distant hum of holiday traffic. The door slammed shut behind me with a final, echoing thud, the lock clicking into place like a judge's gavel, sealing my fate. I stood there on the porch, frozen not just by the biting cold, but by the sheer shock of it all. Heart pounding in my ears, a frantic drumbeat that drowned out the wind's howl. My breath came in ragged puffs, visible in the frigid air, each exhale a reminder that I was alive, but barely hanging on. The duffel bag, Uncle Ray's old army surplus relic, felt like dead weight in my arms, stuffed with whatever he deemed fit to throw at me. A few crumpled shirts, a pair of worn jeans, maybe a half-eaten sandwich from dinner. No coat, no gloves, no boots that could handle this kind of weather. The snow was already ankle-deep, and the temperature had dipped below zero, according to the radio I'd heard earlier. Hypothermia could set in within minutes if I didn't move, or starvation if I couldn't find shelter. Worse, the emotional freeze, losing everything I'd ever known, the last shreds of family that had kept me tethered to some semblance of normalcy. What the hell had I done to deserve this? The question looped in my mind like a broken record, fueling the panic rising in my chest. It started with that stupid argument at dinner. Uncle Ray, the self-appointed patriarch of our dysfunctional clan, had been ranting about my lazy-ass lifestyle, how I'd bounced from job to job, burned through girlfriends like cigarettes, and never amounted to anything. "You're 29 and still mooching off the family," he'd bellowed, slamming his fist on the table, making the silverware rattle. I'd snapped back, fueled by too much eggnog and years of pent-up resentment. "At least I'm not a bitter old drunk hiding behind a badge and a pension," I'd yelled, referencing his glory days as a small-town cop, now reduced to security guard shifts at the mall. The words hung in the air, poisonous, and before I knew it, the whole family was staring, my cousins wide-eyed, Aunt Linda whispering prayers under her breath. Uncle Ray's eyes had darkened, and now, here I was, exiled like a leper in the snow. No friends to call. I'd alienated most of them with my hot-headed ways. No money for a motel. The last of my cash had gone to a six-pack that now sat untouched in the fridge inside. The town was dead this time of night, lights twinkling in distant windows like mocking stars. I could try the shelter downtown, but it was miles away, and in this storm, I'd be lucky to make it without collapsing. Visions flashed through my mind, frostbite turning my fingers black, curling up in a snowdrift like some forgotten hobo, or worse, wandering into the woods and never coming out. The consequences could be deadly, and for what? A moment of pride? A lifetime of regret. But as I stood there, shivering, something shifted. Not in the weather, but inside me. The duffel bag slipped from my numbed fingers, landing with a soft thud in the snow. I knelt to pick it up, and that's when I felt it. A bulge in the side pocket, something hard and metallic. My fingers, stiff from the cold, fumbled with the zipper. Inside wasn't just clothes. There was a wad of cash, hundreds, maybe more, wrapped in a rubber band, and beneath it, a small handgun, cold and heavy in my palm. Uncle Ray's service piece? Or something else? A note fluttered out, scrawled in his handwriting, for emergencies. "Don't come back." My heart raced faster now, not from fear, but from a spark of something dangerous, opportunity. This wasn't just exile, it was a power shift. He thought he could toss me out like trash, but now I had leverage. The gun felt like a key, unlocking doors I'd never dared open. Maybe I could use this, hustle my way out of this mess, turn the tables on the family that had written me off. The snow fell harder, but I straightened up, a grim smile cracking my frozen lips. I wasn't the victim anymore, I was the storm. Zipping the bag shut, I slung it over my shoulder and trudged down the steps, the cold no longer biting as deep. Somewhere out there, in the swirling white, was a way to claw back. But first, I had to survive the night, and maybe, just maybe, make Uncle Ray regret ever opening that door. The streets were deserted, a ghost town wrapped in the cruel irony of the holiday season. Holiday lights twinkled from windows like distant stars, mocking my isolation with their festive cheer, red and green bulbs casting garish shadows on the snow-covered pavement, reminding me of the warmth and laughter I was barred from. I trudged through the deepening drifts, each step a labored crunch that echoed my solitude. My breath fogged the air in thick, desperate clouds, my lungs burning from the icy bite. No cars, no pedestrians, just the relentless wind whipping snowflakes into my face, stinging like tiny knives. The town of Elmwood, usually bustling with last-minute shoppers and carolers, had retreated indoors, leaving me exposed to the elements. I was a pariah, exiled from the very place that had shaped me, and the cold wasn't just physical. It seeped into my bones, amplifying the dread coiling in my gut. As I walked, I replayed the argument in my head, a loop of regret and rage that fueled my panic. It had started innocently enough, or so I'd thought. Christmas Eve dinner, The table laden with Aunt Linda's famous ham and mashed potatoes, the air thick with the scent of pine from the tree in the corner. Uncle Ray had cornered me in the kitchen, his voice low and menacing. "You still owe me that $5,000 from last year, Jake. And don't think I forgot about those promises you made. Fixing the roof, helping with the bills. You're nothing but a leech." I'd brushed it off at first, laughing it away with a swig of eggnog. But then the secret slipped out, the one I'd buried deep. I'd used part of that borrowed money to bail out a shady acquaintance from a debt, a guy tied to some underground dealings I'd stumbled into during my hustling days. "It's not just money, Uncle," I'd hissed back. "I got tangled in something bigger. If I don't pay up soon, people could come looking for me, for the family." His eyes had widened, the color draining from his face. "You idiot. You've put us all at risk." The room erupted then, cousins shouting, Aunt Linda crying, and before I knew it, I was shoved out the door with that duffel bag, the secret hanging like a noose around my neck. My phone buzzed in my pocket, shattering the silence of the night. I fumbled for it with numb fingers, the screen lighting up with a barrage of messages. "Stay away, Jake. You bring trouble wherever you go." That was from my cousin Mike, the golden boy who'd always looked down on me. Another ping. "If you show your face again, we'll make sure you regret it, family or not." From Sarah, the cousin I'd once dated in high school, her words laced with venom. More threats followed, each one ratcheting up the fear, warnings about calling the cops, about handling it ourselves if I didn't vanish. Panic set in like a tidal wave, crashing over me. My heart hammered against my ribs, sweat beading on my forehead despite the cold. No plan, no safety net. I'd burned through my contacts, alienated everyone who might have helped. The money in the duffel, Uncle Ray's emergency stash, felt tainted like blood money. What if these threats weren't just words? What if the people I'd crossed were already on their way, drawn by the secret I'd blurted out? I had no destination in mind, just the instinct to keep moving, to put distance between me and the house. The snow fell heavier now, blanketing the streets in a white shroud that muffled sounds and distorted shapes. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, eerie shadows that danced like phantoms. I passed the old diner where I'd worked summers ago, its windows dark and empty, a reminder of jobs lost and dreams deferred. My legs ached, muscles screaming from the effort, but I pushed on, the cold numbing my toes, making each step feel like wading through quicksand. Visions of hypothermia flashed through my mind. Fingers turning blue, body shutting down, a slow, agonizing end in the snow. Or worse, starvation if I couldn't find food. But the real terror was the human element. The secret I'd revealed could bring predators knocking, people who didn't play by rules. What if Uncle Ray had already tipped someone off? What if the family was plotting something right now? Eventually, I spotted an abandoned shed on the outskirts of town, a dilapidated relic from some forgotten farm, its wood weathered and splintered. It was a desperate choice, but desperation was all I had. I shoved the door open with a groan, the hinges protesting like rusty bones. Inside, it was a tomb, dusty, cobwebbed, with the faint stench of mildew and decay. A single window, cracked and frosted, let in a sliver of moonlight. I collapsed onto a pile of old hay bales, pulling a thin, moth-eaten blanket from the duffel over my shivering frame. It offered little warmth, just a scratchy illusion of comfort. Exhaustion hit me like a freight train, but sleep was a distant dream. Every creak in the night made me jump, my body tensing as if electrified. Was that a branch snapping outside? Footsteps in the snow? I strained to listen, the wind howling like a chorus of accusations. Convinced someone was coming to finish what my family had started, maybe a cousin with a grudge, or worse, the shadowy figures from my past debts. My mind raced with possibilities, a knife in the dark, a beating to teach me a lesson, or simply leaving me to freeze. The suspense gnawed at me, a relentless beast chewing through my resolve. What if they found me here, vulnerable and alone? What if I never got to explain myself, to make amends for the mess I'd created? The secret felt like a ticking bomb, and I was the one holding the fuse. Hours dragged on, each minute stretching into eternity. I huddled tighter, clutching the duffel like a shield, the gun inside a cold reminder of how far I'd fallen. The shed seemed to close in, walls whispering threats. A sudden thud against the door, wind, or something more sinister, sent adrenaline surging through me. I held my breath, eyes wide in the darkness, waiting for the inevitable. But nothing came. Yet, the night wore on, and with it, the certainty that this was just the beginning of my crisis. If I didn't figure out how to survive, how to confront the fallout of my mistakes, the end might come sooner than I feared. By morning, the first gray light filtered through the cracked window of the shed, pulling me from a fitful sleep riddled with nightmares of freezing to death or shadowy figures dragging me away. Hunger gnawed at my insides like a rabid animal, a sharp, insistent pain that drowned out the lingering chill. Desperation clawed its way up my throat, forcing me to move. I couldn't stay here, huddled in this decaying tomb, waiting for the cold or my family's wrath to claim me. With stiff fingers, I zipped up the duffel bag, the weight of the gun and cash a grim reminder of the night before. The snow had lightened to a drizzle, but the streets were still slick and treacherous as I trudged toward the center of town, my boots crunching through slush. The diner, Eddie's place, a greasy spoon I'd worked at years ago, loomed ahead, its neon sign flickering like a beacon in the fog. It was open early for the holiday stragglers, steam rising from the vents, the smell of coffee and bacon wafting out to tease my empty stomach. I pushed through the door, the bell jingling mockingly, and approached the counter where Eddie himself stood, wiping down the formica with a rag. "Eddie, man, I need work." I blurted, my voice hoarse from the cold. "Anything. Washing dishes, mopping floors, just enough to scrape by." He eyed me warily, his bushy eyebrows knitting together. "Jake Harlan, heard you got yourself in hot water with the family. You sure you want to be seen here?" But desperation won out. He sighed and tossed me an apron. "Fine, but keep your head down. Start in the back." I dove into the work, scrubbing pots and pans with a fervor born of survival, the hot water scalding my numb hands back to life. The diner's hum filled the air, clatter of plates, sizzle of the grill, chatter of early customers. But as I worked, snippets of conversation drifted back from the front. Heard Ray's been skimming off the top again. One trucker muttered to another over coffee. That nephew of his, Jake, got caught in the crossfire. Poor kid didn't know what he was stepping into. My ears perked up, heart skipping a beat. Skimming? What the hell were they talking about? I strained to listen, pretending to focus on a stubborn grease stain. Another voice chimed in, lower, conspiratorial. "Nah, it's bigger than that. Ray's got ties to those out-of-town investors, construction scams, fake permits. Jake borrowed money for some personal mess, but Ray used it to cover his tracks. Made the boy the scapegoat to keep the heat off himself." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Shady stuff I'd always suspected but never confronted. Uncle Ray's business trips, the unexplained cash flows, the way he'd always steered clear of questions about his investments. That spark ignited something deep inside me, a fuse of righteous fury and newfound purpose. I wasn't just some screw-up, I'd been played. The money I'd stolen was part of a bigger scam, and I'd been the unwitting fall guy. My hands trembled as I rinsed a plate, the water running red from a cut I'd reopened. This was the turning point, the moment I stopped being the victim and started fighting back. During my break, I slipped into the alley behind the diner, pulling out my phone with shaking fingers. Old contacts, guys from my hustling days, a few shady acquaintances I'd kept on the down low. I made calls, my voice low and urgent. "Hey, Tommy, remember that favor I did for you last year? Yeah, I need info on Ray Harlan's dealings. Construction stuff, investors. Keep it quiet." Late-night whispers turned into a web of revelations. One contact, a clerk at the county office, emailed me scanned documents, fake invoices, diverted funds. Another, a bartender who'd overheard Ray bragging, confirmed the scams, overbilling on town projects, pocketing kickbacks. Each piece of evidence built my case, but with it came the risks. My heart raced with every call, paranoia setting in. What if they were tracing me? What if Uncle Ray had eyes everywhere? The power shifted then, a seismic tilt in the balance. I wasn't the villain anymore. I had leverage. Photos of incriminating papers, voice memos of confessions. It all went into a hidden folder on my phone, encrypted and backed up to a cloud account I'd set up under a fake name. But the suspense built like a storm, thick and oppressive. As I left the diner that evening, a black SUV idled across the street, its tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. I ducked into an alley, pulse thundering, convinced it was one of Ray's goons. Evading them became my new routine, slipping through back streets, changing directions at random, always glancing over my shoulder. I crashed in motels on the outskirts, paying cash under assumed names, the neon signs casting eerie glows on peeling wallpaper. One night, in a dingy room reeking of cigarette smoke, I heard footsteps outside my door, slow, deliberate. I grabbed the gun from the duffel, hand slick with sweat, finger on the trigger. The steps passed, but the fear lingered, a constant buzz in my veins. Alleys became my hunting grounds, dark corners where I met informants under the cover of night. "You got balls, kid," one whispered, handing me a USB drive with more dirt. "But Ray's got connections, cops, muscle. One wrong move, and you're done." I nodded, adrenaline fueling me, turning me from prey to predator. I tailed a cousin once, hiding in the shadows as he met with a shady type, snapping photos that could expose the whole operation. Each risk heightened the tension, close calls with near misses, sleepless nights plotting my next step. The suspense gnawed at me. What if they found my evidence? What if I got hurt before I could strike? But the power was mine now, a weapon sharper than any blade. I was no longer running. I was closing in, ready to turn the tables on the family that had betrayed me. The game had changed, and I intended to win. New Year's Eve descended on Elmwood like a shroud of fireworks and false hope, the sky exploding in bursts of red and gold that lit up the snow-dusted rooftops. I was back in town, but not as the broken man they'd kicked out into the blizzard weeks ago. No, I'd transformed, honed by desperation, fueled by the truth I'd unearthed. From a dingy motel room on the outskirts, I'd orchestrated my revenge, or rather, my reclamation. The evidence I'd gathered, scanned documents, voice recordings, photos of illicit meetings, had been leaked anonymously to the authorities through a secure tip line. I watched it unfold from afar, heart pounding as black and white cruisers converged on Uncle Ray's sprawling house, sirens wailing like a symphony of justice. SWAT teams breached the doors, flashlights cutting through the festive lights still strung on the porch. The family empire crumbled in real time. Arrests for fraud and embezzlement, debts exposed in a web of shady construction deals that stretched across the county. Ray's investments unraveled, millions siphoned from town projects, fake permits, kickbacks to corrupt officials. My cousins, once smug and entitled, were hauled out in handcuffs, their faces masks of shock and betrayal. Aunt Linda sobbed on the lawn, her holiday dress stained with snow and tears. It was poetic, almost a New Year's purge, washing away the rot. By New Year's Day, the fallout was complete. The town buzzed with scandal, headlines screaming about the Harlan family's downfall. My burner phone, tucked in my pocket like a talisman, began to vibrate incessantly. Messages flooded in, desperate and pleading. "Jake, please come back. We were wrong, so wrong. We need you now more than ever." From Uncle Ray, his voice cracking in a voicemail. "Son, I know I screwed up, but your family. Help us fix this. Cousins chimed in, their arrogance shattered. We can make it right. Just talk to the cops for us. Even Aunt Linda, the peacemaker, sent a text. Forgive us, Jake. We love you. It was surreal. The tables turned so sharply it left me dizzy. I'd gone from exile to savior, the one who held the key to their freedom or their ruin. The power had flipped completely. They were the beggars now, scrambling in the ashes of their own making. I arrived at the house that afternoon, the sun low and weak, casting long shadows over the crime scene tape fluttering in the breeze. The place looked ravaged, doors ajar, furniture overturned from the raid, holiday decorations strewn like confetti from a funeral. I stood on the porch, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, the weight of the gun inside a reminder of how far I'd come. Knocking felt symbolic, a reversal of that Christmas Eve shove. Uncle Ray answered, his face haggard, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. He froze, recognition dawning, then crumbled. Jake, thank God. Come in, please. The others gathered in the living room, Aunt Linda wringing her hands, cousins avoiding my gaze. They begged for forgiveness, voices overlapping in a chorus of desperation. We'll make amends, give you your share, clear your name, whatever it takes. Uncle Ray even offered to cut me in on the remaining assets, his voice thick with regret. You were right about everything. I used you as a scapegoat. Forgive me. But I stood firm, the confrontation a cathartic release. This isn't about revenge, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. It's about survival. You taught me that family ties can break, but I rebuilt myself from the mess you made. I'm walking away stronger, not because I hate you, but because I don't need you anymore. Their pleas echoed as I turned, the door clicking shut behind me. Outside, the New Year air felt crisp and liberating. I walked away, not looking back, knowing I'd risen above the ashes. The empire was in ruins, but my life was just beginning, a testament to proving I could claw my way out, one risky step at a time. No more bridges burned. I'd built my own path. Looking back on that fateful Christmas Eve, the night my uncle shoved me out into the snow with nothing but a duffel bag and a world of regrets, I realized it was the ultimate wake-up call, a brutal, icy slap that shattered my illusions and forced me to confront the man I'd become. At 29, I'd been coasting through life, pushing boundaries without purpose, burning bridges with a stubborn fire that left me isolated and adrift. The exile wasn't just physical. It stripped away the safety net of family ties I'd taken for granted, fragile as they were. Huddled in that abandoned shed, shivering through the night, I hit rock bottom hard. Panic gave way to clarity. This was my rock bottom, the abyss from which I could either sink or soar. It taught me that sometimes you need to fall completely to understand how to climb higher. No more excuses, no more blaming others for my mistakes. I owned them, and in that ownership, I found the strength to rebuild. Starting fresh wasn't easy. It was a grind, a deliberate choice to distance myself from the drama that had defined my past. I packed up what little I had and headed to a new city, far from Elmwood's suffocating grip. There, I hustled harder than ever, landed a steady job in construction, something honest and tangible, where my hands built structures instead of destroying relationships. Nights were spent in community classes, learning skills I'd neglected, coding, even writing, to forge a future I controlled. I made new connections, real ones, with people who saw my potential, not my flaws. Therapy helped unpack the baggage, turning anger into resilience. By the end of the first year, I had a modest apartment, savings in the bank, and a sense of peace I'd never known. The drama faded like a bad dream, replaced by routines that grounded me, morning runs, weekend hikes, and friendships that didn't come with strings. Family, I learned, isn't always about blood. It's the people who stand by you when you're down, who lift you up without judgment. My old family, they're still reaching out, messages trickling in like echoes from a ghost. Come home. Jake, we miss you. We were wrong, let's start over. But I've moved on. Forgiving them doesn't mean forgetting the pain. It means not letting it define me. I've chosen my tribe now, those who've earned my trust through loyalty, not obligation. It's liberating, knowing I don't need their approval to thrive. In the end, that exile was a gift in disguise, a catalyst for growth. It proved I could rise from ashes, stronger and wiser. What would you do in my shoes? Would you forgive and rebuild, or cut ties and start anew? Share your thoughts below. I'm curious to hear how others navigate these crossroads.